Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today is our part one, Foundations and Planning for Teaching, with navigating the split, curriculum planning for split, multi-age, or combined grades class. I'm here today with Adelie and Cheryl.
We are so happy that you could join us today. Thank you so much. I'd just like to start today by recognizing that Adelie, Jess, and I are all coming from different parts of Alberta, and we hope that you are tuning in with us as well. I'm specifically coming from Calgary, and I hope you'll enjoy this beautiful drone footage that we have available for you to take a look at and see. It always strikes me as just this amazing bird's eye view of all of the diversity and the gifts that we have here in Alberta. And so when we're thinking about all of the diversity and the ways that our province and the land can support our lives and our relationships with each other, it also makes me think about the diversity that happens in multi-age classes and how those little or older friends, however they may be, all need something different from you. And so when we work together, we really want to try to streamline planning and make it as easy as possible for you. So this session is going to offer you one way of thinking foundationally about how to approach planning for a lot of different levels, even if you just have one grade or two, or perhaps you're a colony teacher and you have all of them. And so we hope that you'll be able to take a little nugget of an idea away from this today.
So, like I said, I'm with Adelie Penner and Cheryl Babin. Myself, I am Jess Orcheski, and we're so excited to have the first of four parts today. So let's start it off. We thought that we would start this great idea with how might learning progression support the multi-age planning to include all students? It's a loaded question to say the least. But starting off with you, Adelie, what do you think?
Right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Jess. I'm actually going to throw it to Cheryl for a little bit. When we were thinking about how some ideas and some imagery around multi-age classroom, we really thought that we needed to get to the heart of learning outcomes and to understand proficiency. And Cheryl, do you want to start us off and talk about our stairs and Katie White a little bit, and then I'll pick it up at the end.
Yes, thanks, Adelie. Our friend Katie White, who is a Canadian assessment author and master teacher, she writes in her book called Softening the Edges about readiness and the idea that whatever the learning outcome is, there are steps toward that that allow a student to feel ready and to have what they need to be able to achieve proficiency of a learning outcome. And so when we are thinking about a multi-age group, we know that where we want students to be able to start wherever they are and enter into the learning in that place that feels connected to their prior knowledge and their experience, and that they might be able to bring those together. And so we thought that we would take Katie's idea and see if we might stretch this readiness stairway into a multi-age setting, whereby we are allowing for students to enter in at the stage or the step that allows them to come toward that learning outcome, which is represented here by the top of the stairways. It's not just like a cliff that you drop off at the end there. It's like learning, achieving that outcome. So the idea is to start from that learning outcome, and maybe it would be sort of a mid-level or a high end of where you want students to get to. And then as a teacher, you start to think about what is it that they will all need in the earliest entry point, and then some of those steps along the way. What do you think, Adelie? Can you add to that?
I love that. And what I love about the stair is, you think about kids, right? And you come up to a staircase. Some kids jump right up to the third stair. Some kids walk their way one by one. And that's really what we're looking at here when we look at that readiness stairway that Cheryl was talking about. And Cheryl, I appreciate the way you sort of framed it around how can we use this now for multi-age. We've known for a long time that we've had continuum of students in our classrooms. There's never been homogeneous groupings. And so now when we're in a multi-age classroom, we can really lean into and acknowledge, where are our students on these stairs, and where are they in relation to proficiency? And so again, as Cheryl mentioned, the top of the stairway gives some clarity for what the proficiency of that conceptual understanding would look like within a years of growth. And so what would that proficiency look like? And then we look at the staircase and we see what needs to be on those stairs for students who haven't shared the developmentally that proficiency yet. And so that share span, as Cheryl was talking about, will span more than 1 year, perhaps, worth of growth. Perhaps it'll include other classrooms, it'll include other abilities. It may also include some reciprocity from other skills that they've learned, to Cheryl's point about that pre-knowledge, so that we see those coming on the stairs. And in a few slides, we've taken and broken this down for us, but we just wanted to take a look at an idea of how the stairway could work for us.
Yeah, I like that. And wouldn't it be cool if everyone in your learning environment, in your learning community was working on a similar task,
Yeah.
but accessing it at different levels that are appropriate to where they are on that readiness stairway. And so we were kind of talking about this and thinking about it. Jess was pulling out some ideas from some of her science teaching experience, and as were Adelie and I. And we were thinking about almost like a design task where everyone in your class is doing the same challenge. And it has sort of a generic, I suppose, goal. But the criteria for success would be more specific based on the achievement readiness of those students. And so we thought, okay, what if you are an engineer and you have to carry some sort of I didn't want to say vehicle or tell them what it was. So,
Yeah.
a something transporter that can carry a load and travel a distance. And so then by creating more specific criteria for success, I think you can pull from clusters of cusps and learning outcomes, not too many, just pulling a few together. Many of them would be similar in each grade because you want to be working together as a learning community. But then when it comes time for us to assess the understanding, skills, knowledge, and procedures, and the achievement of that learning outcome, we'll be able to see how it all plays out at that particular grade level.
I love it. And I love the learning that can happen as all those grades watch each other, and all the different ability groups look at these different projects and see how they can inform each other.
Yeah, and it really can build a community that way.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, what we're looking for in our multi-age and multi-grade classrooms.
Mhm.
We
Do you
we
want to
brought back,
unpack this idea a little bit more? Yeah, let's get into
yeah.
it. Mhm.
Well, we brought back the stereo, and we found, and I love this picture because what it reminds us is the staircase is not a linear staircase. We know that as we learn new things and we have new learning objectives, we're going to consistently be reaching for that new proficiency piece. And so the idea that we actually spiral these staircases and we get to the door, and then there's another door, and then there's another door, which is really exciting as we move our way through and think about where we want to go. And so we looked here about taking some investigation on forces. And we pulled out what would be the learning outcomes in grade 3, grade 4, grade 6, and grade 7. And as the three of us sort of sat and chatted about, well, what would be the proficiency steps, which was which I think is an important part of the process. And for those of you who are watching today as you're doing it, consider thinking about what those steps are, and thinking about the order, because it could be anything, but the process of understanding that proficiency and what students need to know to move forward is the profoundness of the exercise. And so we've created some examples here that you could use to think about. But as you're looking at those projects that Cheryl was just talking about, and some of the exemplars around that transporter piece, you will be able to see very clearly the way that your students are entering that part of the presentation, thinking about their problem solving, where do they want to go, by what of these skills, discrete skills, have they already mastered and feel comfortable with, and which have they not. and where might they go, and having kids to be able to say, where do I need to go next to be successful might be also interesting for you to consider. Cheryl, I'm sure you've got some things to add.
Why? Because I've got my hands and I'm like jumping up. Hey, Jess, can please go back one more slide for a second?
Yeah.
I'm imagining that these steps would also help to design the learning as you're going along, right?
Yeah.
So if if you are working with students that are just entering the idea of forces, then you would be playing and you'd be moving. I think we talked about getting the story of kids on a crash mat and the teacher pushing the crash mat across the gym floor, and then designing lessons and mini lessons and experiences that move them through that progression. So this can really um, help you think through how the design of that whole learning series would go.
Yeah.
And you know what else you said that I really loved was how you mentioned that we talked through it together. And I think that's everything. Sometimes multi-age teachers feel isolated because you might be the only one in that grouping, but surround yourself with other teachers and talk about, what do we think will help? Go talk to the grade 8 teacher and say, hey, I'm thinking about proficiency and the progression toward understanding these concepts and really achieving the outcomes. Can you help me talk through what steps would help them get there?
I love that. I love that. Bringing back in the community. I mean, we not only do we not want our students to work alone, we can't work alone. And we
Yes.
can't work in that piece. Thanks, Cheryl, for that reminder. It's important.
This is another Katie White resource that we really like. And one of the reasons that we put this into the foundational component of this discussion and this conversation is that we want to be able to equip students with the skills, the knowledge, and the will to be able to be part of that assessment conversation on behalf of their own learning. And we want to do that in every class, but it's really essential in a multi-age class because we really want them to be part of it. And so in sharing resources, we wanted to show you that this is one of the great ones that we like. There's actually a ton, and we'll put more of them in the links with all of the resources, but just wanted to offer this as another nudge toward that learning. Log into Solution Tree to get some of the details and a free account to some of the tools and templates that you can take with you.
I was just gonna ask, I'm like, where could we get this? But there you
Yes,
go.
yes. Yeah, at Solution Tree, Amazon, your neighbor next door, they're everywhere. Mhm.
Thanks, Cheryl.
And just as we round out the learning progression part of our conversation for today, and of course, we could talk about this for a lot longer, so feel very free to reach out. We'd be happy to continue the conversation with you. We know we know from assessment practices, we also know from being in classrooms with students that self-reflection is the key to cementing what we've learned, what we've understand, and to knowing more about ourselves as learners, and therefore making us assessment ready, assessment capable, whatever language that you're using. And so we've included, again, you'll see Go Solution Tree is highlighted on that slide. But we want us to take time not only as practitioners to reflect on how the competencies are going, we also want to reflect with our students to say, what did I learn? What do I know? What do I still need to learn? Where do I need to go next? And our students don't come to us knowing how to say, hey, this is where I need to go next, or this is what I'd like to learn next. And so we really have to train that with them and bring that culture of inquiry and staying curious and being scientists and saying, okay, now that I've learned this, here's my next question. Because we want to be able to gear our students to be able to do that with us.
I'm sitting back in awe. I'm just like, yep, that sounds great. I have so much more to learn. I love it. So moving forward with the cross grade concepts, we have several examples coming up that are really, really neat. And I think that something for everyone for sure. Cheryl, is this something you can bounce off of?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I think once you start seeing these key concepts in learning outcomes and cusps and curriculum and resources, you can't unsee it. So Adelie, if you're to look at this, we've just pulled out organizing idea, guiding question, and learning outcome. This slide is a grade 2 example. The next one is a grade 3 example. I know they're bolded and like enlarged for you on the slide, but how do you make sense of this? Where does that land for you?
Yeah, I love the question, and I loved our conversation as we were sort of building some of these things, because I think one thing that's really helpful to that for me in remembering how to sort of move forward is I know that I am going to be assessing the verbs. And so then I go and I look for the nouns, and I want to pull out the nouns in my learning outcomes, because I know that's what that's the concept. And that's what when we look at the door and that proficiency step, that's really what I need to be setting my targets to represent and to reflect with my students. So when we look at this earth systems, again, understanding the living world, earth, space are deepened through investigating natural systems and their interactions. So we can see there's going to be an interplay. We're going to learn something about a model and then the relationship. When we from the organizing idea, when we go straight to the learning outcome, we see that very clearly. The relationship piece and students being able to understand the relationship between earth, the landforms, body of waters, relation to the sun, all of those pieces start to come together for us. And then when we flash forward to grade 3, we say, okay, well, what do grade 3s need to learn about earth systems? And we're going to start to pull out from the learning outcome that we're going to build on understanding that relationship to identify how things change on the surface. And then we're going to pull out earth systems from grade 4, grade 6, grades, whatever grades we have, whether it's a combined classroom, whether it's a multi-graded classroom, we're going to be looking at what that is. And that takes us to that beautiful example that Cheryl gave us earlier around now, how do I shape an idea? How do I shape and pull those concepts together to create a task that can span all of the different learners that I have and the inquiry? And so my steps now become the progression of where we actually want to end with our folks. And Julie Stern, I know many of you will be fans like we are of Julie's work. And in this book, the conceptual understanding piece, she's pulled out these beautiful frames. And so as you're planning and as you're thinking about it, whether you are a seasoned veteran or somebody coming at this for the first time, these frameworks are really helpful in a multi-age classroom as we start to think about what is going to be set the stage for the inquiry, for the examples, for the kinds of work that we'd like our students to be investigating and thinking about. And so what is the relationship between the concept of earth systems and change, or relationships that we've just looked at, or all of the other pieces that we might be pulling in? How does change impact our neighborhood? What effect do relationship and change have on our urban design when we're moving into some of our grade 4 to 6 groups? How do the forces of change and our earth systems interact? So we're seeing some changes now. We used to, talk about El Nino, and we talked about all kinds of different weather systems. And now we're noticing that some of that is changing. Why is that happening? Those might be some of the big questions that we start with and then have students start to explore. And I just want to, Cheryl, I'm just wondering what it looks like in a classroom when we've taken these ideas and these concepts, we've asked ourselves some questions. How do we move that forward with our kiddos?
Yeah, I think that these concepts really have the potential to not only link the learning from grade to grade and show that, this is a progression over time, but it also opens up the door for that transdisciplinary approach where suddenly you can integrate language and story and relationships and indigenous ways of knowing and scientific evidence. And so It doesn't always have to be pretty. You can make it pretty if that's important to you. This is like a little bit of a sketch note that I was creating when I was trying to think about how to link multiple grades together and how to pull some different subjects together. On the next slide, I'd like to share with you, it's kind of one of my favorite samples of a student piece. And this particular task really does span multiple grades because it's looking at the at elements of matter and of energy and trying to also integrate it into some of the social studies curriculum where it was looking at the connection and the relationships between people. And so this is a grade 1 sample of work, but you could see how the notion of building a structure and the connections and the fasteners and strengthening all of those pieces can really support. It shows up in lots of learning outcomes across the grades when we are looking at matter and energy. And so this particular task asked the students to think about designing a structure that would connect people in a community. And this particular student named Aria in grade 1, so it's a couple of years ago, you can see that now, Aria decided to build a statue because she really noticed when they did their inquiry and went out into different playgrounds to check out different examples that the statue actually used a lot of the building fundamentals and the structures were strong and they offered she examined the fasteners, but she also noticed that people could cluster around the statue to talk about their birthday parties and things like that. And so on the next page, you can dig a little bit deeper into the process of that learning. You can see on the left-hand side that Aria was identifying some of the scientific components, the materials, the fasteners, the building strategies, and this is where your cusps come in. But they were also asked to choose 2 out of the 4 competencies or approaches to learning they were named in this particular example. And she chose to talk about self-management skills like showing pride in her work and representing the thinking skills whereby she asked someone, and don't you love how she just writes it right around the bullet
I
and
love it so
circles
much.
that? But she asked somebody if it was a good idea to put a pipe cleaner around the bottom. And so she was seeking information in that community and pulling it all back together. So not only is this a science task, but it can transcend and the actual product can look different student to student based on their readiness on the stairway, the grade level and the cusps and the learning outcomes specific to their needs and their level, and also building those competencies along the way, which I think is really important in a learning community model.
I
I
love it. And I
loved
love
how
that
she
there's the
spelled
interaction, right?
statue. I think that was my favorite part. I love the writing around the circle, but I love the statue too.
I also like the glue gun,
Yes.
Yeah.
the glow gun. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. So I think we want to leave you today with these ideas. I know it's brief. Please reach out. We're working together in an ongoing way to try to support you in your classrooms for all of the students that you have together, whether it's 1 grade level or 10. And we know that students are coming to us to be in our learning communities in with all of their gifts and stretches. And so we hope that this will offer a little nugget of an idea that you can take with you and know that you're supported and we are there with you. Thank you, Adelie and Jess, for doing this together. It was fun.
Thank
It
you so
was. Thanks,
much.
everybody.
See you next time.